Welcome to the Aligned Voices podcast. This is a space created by Healthy Aligned Living for honest, real conversations about healing, growth, and what it actually looks like to build a healthier life. Every episode gives you practical tips, supportive insights, and empowering ideas to help you move forward, no matter where you are in your journey. If you or someone you care about needs support, head to healthyalignedliving.com for HeyL programs, groups, and helpful resources. Just a quick reminder, this podcast is here to guide and inform, but it's not medical advice. Always talk to a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your treatment or care plan. Take a breath, relax, and let's get into today's episode of the Aligned Voices podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Aligned Voices by Healthy Aligned Living, a podcast where we have honest conversation around healing, wellness, addiction recovery, emotional resilience, and creating more aligned life. Today's guest is Megan Swan, wellness strategist and author, podcast host, and entrepreneur, and founder of Megan Swan Wellness and Alta Vita Medical Wellness Tourism. Megan has spent over 15 years in wellness industry helping women build sustainable energy, mental clarity, and emotional resilience without burnout. But what makes her story especially powerful is that her journey didn't begin in wellness. It began in chaos, disconnection, party culture, and a search for something deeper. Her book, Marinating in Chaos, which has already been published in 2025, explores that transformation, honesty, and vulnerability from escaping negative narratives and unhealthy patterns to rebuilding life through wellness, sobriety, nervous system regulation, and intentional living. Today, we will ask her about emotional healing, wellness culture, entrepreneurship, identity recovery, and what it truly means to create wellness as a way of life. Welcome to Aligned Voices, Megan. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, we usually start by getting to know our guests. I have been following your work. I know what you are doing. I know the approaches that you have been taking. For the listeners who are discovering you for the first time, who is Megan?
Such a loaded question, right? Well, I'll lead with I'm a wellness entrepreneur and strategist. I've been working in the wellness space for 15 years. Like most entrepreneurs, I think I don't have like a straight trajectory story. I first owned and operated yoga studios. Then I had a health and wellness magazine. This is about 10 years ago. Eventually, I started coaching. At this point, I have 9 different certifications, different modalities, and I primarily coach entrepreneurs, female founders in the tech startup space, and it tends to be women, although it's not across the board, but that are also either looking to be mothers or wanting to be mothers or already are mothers. But yeah, that's one hat that kind of lives under the Megan Swan Wellness company that I founded 8 years ago. The coaching does. And the other hat that I wear is for Alta Vita, which is a newer project. It's only a year old. It's a young baby project. And that is medical wellness tourism. So I'm deep into nervous system regulation, longevity markers, and really just supporting and empowering people to have as much information and then make, aligned decisions. A lot of what I do under the sort of banner of supporting people building wellness infrastructure into their lives is so that, wellness feels like a part of your life and a foundation and not like more things on your to-do list.
So I see that you have come a long way from, yoga studio to magazines and now a wellness tourism company. So this is a question which I ask all my guests. What would the younger version of you describe who you are now? So in fact, you can also answer, how have you transitioned? How have you transformed through all these years? What was your younger version like and how have you transitioned? Is something which I would definitely want to know.
Yeah. I mean, I've had had and shed a lot of identities, I think one core part of my story is deciding to give up alcohol 8 years ago. And so I think I was not alone. There's quite a a significant part. I was in the Ashtanga yoga space, which is kind of like
Okay.
tends to attract type A high performance because it's so dynamic. And there are a lot of people in that space that also drink a lot of wine. And so it's kind of ironic that there's those dichotomies. And I think in general, there's a lot of alcohol in the ecosystem of wellness that's not questioned. I don't think you necessarily need to entirely quit alcohol like I chose to do, but I think
Hmm.
it is one of many toxins that should be a conversation, especially if you want to be a high performance individual. Really understanding what, you have intentional relationships with things that are known toxins, right? So that allowed me to really become a version of myself that I didn't know was possible. I think, high functioning alcoholism is what I refer to for the first 2 decades of my life as a drinker, was masking a lot. It was keeping me in this sort of spiral of shame and ultimately really affecting my self-esteem and confidence in a way that I didn't perceive or appreciate until I was free of that dynamic.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, the younger version of myself, I don't think would have even, have gone after as big goals. And I have, even bigger ones that I have on the list to go. Uh, and I think it's that compound effect of, saying you're gonna do something that seems a little big and crazy. You get to that point, it's like, all right, so what's next? What's next? What's next? Um, Also being really intentional that like you're not, basing all of your happiness and sense of self on reaching milestones. But yeah, I think she'd be proud, maybe a little shocked that it's also part of, I think, just being in your 40s. There's like a lot of other things going on where you just don't care as much about what other people think. Whereas in your 20s and 30s, you're still giving so much weight to everybody else's weigh in.
Hmm.
And so it's like very freeing. All these, so kind of layers of freedom have come in over the years where it's, I have like so much more energy. Like uh, confidence compounds. And then when you accomplish these goals, it's like, well, if I did that, well, why don't I go over this other crazy goal?
But I think it's for good. So you're very proud of this version that you have transformed into, right?
Yeah, and I haven't felt better ever in my life, which I don't think a lot of 47-year-olds can say.
Beautiful. So if so you I have seen you speaking openly about alcoholism, escapism, and advocating wellness. Uh, were you like, did you ever imagine that you would come to a platform and talk openly about your journey, about your story, and what you have been through, and how you have come out of that situation for good, and now you're advocating wellness? Did you ever like imagine that you would be talking about that phase as well?
Um, I think I mean, there's probably a decade where I knew I had, it wasn't serving me. It wasn't supportive. Like I wouldn't maybe have said I had like an issue or a problem that I was going to go get clinical support with. And that's like a whole other conversation. I didn't do AA. I'm what they call a spontaneous sobriety story. I just decided. And a caveat I always put in that story is I decided to give it up for a year and see what happened, right? At 3 months, I knew I would never go back. But for someone who's in that spiral, I think it's almost impossible to decide without support, at least, that you're doing something forever. I mean, I would argue it's kind of silly to say you're going to do anything forever. My husband and I agree to get married every 10 years because, like, can you really sign up for 80 years with someone? Like, I don't know. Or you're going to do, and you're not going to do something or you're going to do something forever is kind of I just prefer to mentally work in, like different time periods. And it served me. So I think pretty soon after giving it up, I was pretty comfortable talking about my journey to get to that point. Um, and part of it is because I've just been talking about literally every other aspect of things that can affect you physically, mentally, spiritually, and
Yes, I
teaching
see
that.
that.
It was just like the one last thing. And I think it's like the elephant in the wellness room, if you will, that a lot of people don't want to address, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, you often talk about wellness as an infrastructure, right? And not just self care. So, can you just interpret that term for everyone who's listening to this?
Yeah, I think in part it lives better in the sense of understanding that I work with entrepreneurs, and although it works for anyone, but really when you're it infrastructure, I think someone thinks more of business, right? And I think these things are so deeply intertwined, particularly for female entrepreneurs, or really just any entrepreneur in the beginning phases. Like your business is you, you are your business. Your
Yeah.
body and your mind are the core asset of your business if you're the only one running it, right? And then you're the only one running it, making decisions, and that like your sense and level of health and mental health like filters down to your whole team, right? So
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure in the sense that there needs to be some non-negotiables that are so supportive that it's like brushing your teeth. But in order to find out for each individual, because it's very individualized, there's a
Mm-hmm.
process in figuring out what are the things that for you, I mean, certain things are universal, like optimal sleep. But what optimal sleep means is very different based on the individual. And so really just helping people intertwine how they want to live or how they naturally live best with helping them support themselves, mental, physical, spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
emotional. And so in my coaching, like there's no subject off limits. Like I the gamut of everything you can imagine um, needs to be considered if we're actually talking about a sustainable approach that allows you to, again, the foundation that you feel like held in this container versus like kind of trying to grasp for self-care when, most of us have low bandwidth left at the end of the day, little extra time. Um, and there's just like so many things calling our energy and our attention, especially as women, we tend to carry the entire cognitive load of the household. Even if we have like a really supportive partner, we can get into the dynamics of, women back in hunter gatherer psyche. I mean, estrogen helps us have an expansive attention, right? So we walk
Absolutely.
into a room and we notice everything that needs to be fixed or cleaned or picked up. A gentleman or a man walks into a room and he's got testosterone, which is for aim, hunting, right? Like direct action, focused attention. And
Yeah.
of course, both genders have both of these hormones, right? Like you can leverage both, but most women, you walk into a room and whatever needs to be fixed, like you can't really relax until you fix that little thing, right? And that's not the opposite gender is not necessarily having that same experience. And so that is a type of cognitive load that is unique, it tends to be unique to women. And that usually carries over to childcare, to parent care, to your business, like feeling like you're winning when you're fixing everything. And so a big part of it is building in that infrastructure, which can look a lot like boundaries and time blocking and understanding like what is actually yours to carry. And
Absolutely. Yes.
yeah, a lot of it is giving high performance women permission to either like ditch a wellness trend they tried and never liked or never really, adopted, dropping the like $2,000 supplement regimen that they've established over many years and don't really know which ones do anything or not. Um, and, helping them feel really powerful and saying no without explaining themselves.
I get it completely. And as far as you were just discussing about how a woman as like she has an attention span, and she has to balance a lot of things. And I think we have been raised in a way as to we have to play a lot of roles, a lot of responsibilities, and balance them. So we have to be everywhere, is what my take is. So you were just discussing about wellness, but when it comes to a lot of people, I have observed that they often treat wellness as an option, and they become pretty serious when they are completely burned out. So what has been your experience? Has it been any different?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the problem is both of those terms, wellness and burnout, are very misunderstood, overused terms. There's like a clinical definition to burnout, whereas most people are just talking about, you know, needing a break. The clinical burnout is you literally have zero passion for something that you used to be really passionate about. You are like, including, loving relationships in your life and things like that.
Mhm.
Not to say that someone who's feeling, Instagram burnout shouldn't deal with it, but
Mhm.
there are levels of it, right? And same with wellness. Like, it's such a diluted term, I think, these days, that it really like runs the gamut, which is, a good thing sometimes, that what I can always find in someone's life. I'm like, okay, well, what are you doing to relax? Or, how do you feel when you eat this? Or what helps you sleep better? Like, at the end of the day, there are very clear fundamentals that as animals, as humans, as social beings, we need to function. There's like functionality and then optimizing that functionality.
Mm.
And, most people are really just trying to maintain functionality and don't ever get to, it's the place of privilege, I guess, in that they can truly optimize what their life in a way. I mean, I think there's a lot that we can do in being, I don't know what the number is these days, but the average time that we spend watching television or on social media, like, we all do have extra time. We've just been kind of
Yes,
like numbed
definitely.
into spending it in ways that are actually counterproductive to being well.
Mhm.
So something as simple as getting outside every day, like going for a walk, being in nature. If you can't be in nature, like, be with yourself. You are nature. We are nature.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, I used to, in the early days of my coaching, I would spend a lot of time and energy, helping people find like the exact perfect diet. And now there's just like so much noise in the ecosystem, and it's such an individualized thing. So, I'm just like sending warm reminders to my clients, like, grab an apple, get a green juice, like, just add in some of those things that energize you, and remove all that shame and blame that most of us carry, particularly women. Oh, I'm not eating XYZ diet, or I'm not, I do not promote diets, but like, diet meaning like what one eats, not restriction. And um yeah, I think the to me, it's such a broad term that everyone can find something in their life that they're already doing that makes them feel better. So in my mind, that's wellness.
So when did you personally realize wellness had become something which is non-negotiable? Was there a point in your life as well where you started taking wellness very seriously?
Yeah, well, I talk about this in my book, Marinating Chaos. Like, kind of, I joke that yoga was my quote unquote gateway drug into the wellness industry. Like, before I encountered yoga, and it was right as I was leaving my first marriage. So it was like a really potent time in my life that I needed community. I needed some sort of structure. I needed discipline that was like about me. Previous to that, I really didn't do anything healthy. I ate pretty healthy, But other than that, I had the odd sport, but I didn't have any thought really of like, what am I putting in my body and why? Which yoga gave me that frame. Um, Yoga also gave me the frame of practice and ritual and like coming back to yourself and kind of like meeting yourself on the mat or in the mirror. Um, and then also just like being in your body, which is breathing, which is noticing the slight, tiny change in how you can do a posture in a given day, a given week, a given year. And really just that body awareness that, in my 20s, I didn't have. And I think as you develop that, it's like really hard to not be more and more concerned about, oh, well, how's that affecting me? How's this affecting me? So then like the next time was a common time, I think for most women, I got pregnant, and then I became hyper focused on, okay, a lot of women for that period of pregnancy are hyper focused. And, so I had never eaten better in my life. I was active and like doing all the things. But yeah, then it wasn't until, fast forward postpartum with a 2 and a 4-year-old, and I really hadn't got back to having a deep sleep. And I just kind of resigned myself that, okay, 5 hours is enough, like whatever. But I mean, I was slipping into, not clinical, but like I was depressed in a mild depression. And I think most women, often put up with not sleeping well. And so I started working with a coach, and that's what introduced me to coaching. And she introduced me to this concept of the morning routine, which, love it or hate it, at that time I thought she was crazy. Like, I'm not sleeping and you're going to tell me to get up 10, 15 minutes earlier to spend time on myself. Like, that makes no sense. But, now when I can fit it in, I spend an hour on myself in the mornings, and it's just really about like being intentional. So maybe sometimes it's meditation, sometimes it's listening or reading a book. Sometimes it's having coffee with my husband and like not having an agenda, like just being, catching up with each other with no agenda, and exercising, like moving my body is so key, I think, too. So I'm not sure I answered your question. I tend to talk in tangents.
Yes, you did. And it was really nice hearing all of those. So, yes, it was definitely well explained. So, I have read like in some of the messages that you have been dropping, as have spoken about party culture and escapism. Can you just share something about that? Like, what was it? What were you referring to?
Yeah, I mean, I was such a party girl for my really starting at 17 years of age. And I think it's pretty common, at least in North American culture, that alcohol is presented as this confidence booster. We call it liquid courage. It definitely, softens an awkward situation in the beginning, maybe. But yeah, I quickly got into a dysfunctional relationship with it. But it kept me not having to feel a lot of things for a lot of years, or not having directly to deal. I didn't like until I reached yoga and 30 something. I was just kind of like rolling the party forward, not dealing with, really tragic things that had happened to me. And, I think that's a pretty common normalized mechanism as well. We see, shows in Netflix or like social media kind of, I mean, I'm not in that rabbit hole, thank goodness, anymore, but there is like a whole mummy wine culture. So I was like in the party culture. And then if I wanted to be, I could have switched right into motherhood wine culture. And it's really promoted as like the fun or, better way, even in some circles, of handling stress, whatever that stress is in your life. And yeah, I mean, it is maybe for the first 15 minutes of that night. And then you like set yourself up into this spiral of like not getting a good sleep and waking up like with a high cortisol spike at 3 a.m. And then like waking up not remembering exactly everything you said to everybody the night before, or exactly what you did, and it just compounds. And I think there's all sorts of things that people use escapism for, and I think if you are aware, there's a way to, like, chill out and appreciate not focusing on the heaviness or this a stressful aspect of your life. But if it's really just completely keeping you from addressing those issues in a short and a long term, well, yeah, I think it's something that needs to be addressed. But I'm still a party girl. I just probably, you're not going to find me at 4 a.m. anymore. I usually bow out by 1.
And talking about attending parties or trying to escape, was there something in particular you were trying to escape?
Yeah, I
Just
mean, first of all, I'll loop back to that, but I always have loved to dance, and it seemed to me that the only socially acceptable way to, like, completely feel free in your body and dance in it was at a bar or a club or whatever. And so that's, I think, one thing that kept me in that party mentality. But no, I mean, I grew up with a father with alcoholism. He committed suicide when I was 17,
okay.
and um, yeah, I kind of just, like, tongue in cheek continued on. I mean, it was modeled to me not just from him. Like, I would say in general, North American society, our family culture. Like, it was, being a connoisseur of wine was glorified, and that's kind of like in the ecosystem that I grew up in. I knew a lot of about wine, like, long before I could drink it. Um, and this, I don't know, BS social status that goes along with that whole culture. And yeah, so I think those are the fundamental things. But also at a crux, um, I had big aspirations and dreams and desires, but I really felt like I wasn't sure how I was going to get there. In part maybe because I felt a little truncated by the experience of losing my dad, and, like, well, I did process that to understand, like, it was never about me, but as a kid, like, that's the first reaction. And I think it's like I started when I first said about, quitting alcohol, it was really the confidence piece. So I think I set goals for myself at a young age that I knew I could accomplish because I didn't want to disappoint myself. And I didn't quite have enough confidence to, like, really say a crazy goal. Like, I'm glad I didn't go now, but at one point I wanted to go to medical school. And then the more I thought about it, it's like, oh, I don't know, that sounds like it's going to be really hard. And, like, I talked myself out of it. And there's other examples like that. Now that I'm married to a surgeon, like, I would have never loved medical school. That's not my zone of genius. I'm the holistic side of the medical versus the medical in our medical wellness tourism. So yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it really held me back from setting out bigger goals for myself.
So when did you exactly realize that alcoholism was becoming a problem for you, and this was enough, and you had to just battle this out and become
Yeah.
sober?
Well, I kind of alluded. So I had the gift when I was, there was like a 4-year period that I didn't drink because I was pregnant, breastfeeding, pretty much back to back. And so that gave me a lot of insight of, like, one, being at all these parties where everyone else is drinking and you're not. Two, I still kind of thought that I missed it at that point, but I could see that it didn't quite hit the same way postpartum. Um, and yeah, like, essentially my values had shifted. So I really quit first for my kids because I could see that I knew I could be a better mother than I was being, and I just wasn't okay with it. There was kind of like a rock bottom scenario which I can tell you if you want, but that just made me realize that I'd crossed a line, growing up with an alcoholic father that I swore I would never cross. And I, well, so before I decided to quit, I tried mindful drinking for a year, which is someone who has the problems version. I mean, anytime you are you're watching yourself have rules to try and control a substance or a habit in your life, it probably means you don't actually have control over it. So after a year of that experimentation and just feeling like, no, just there was still enough times that I don't like how I showed up in the world, whether that was as a mother the day after or things that I did the day of while intoxicated. And I just knew I could be a better person. And at that moment, it was more about being a more patient mother, being a more present mother. And then pretty quickly after quitting, it became like for me to be a better version of me across the board.
Thank you for sharing that. So, something which is very related to it, people who battle substance abuse or any sort of addiction, they they have to lose something in this whole course, right? So did you also experience something like you had to, the relationships were deteriorating and you had to lose a few good friends or something like this? Did you experience?
To some degree, but I think that the social pressure that I imagined was not as intense as it actually. I mean, I tell the story that I decided I was like listening to a podcast. Gabor Mate was on a podcast and he was talking about, he's an addiction specialist. And he's quite open that he's personally addicted to work, right? And it's like affected his marriage. And he said a few things in that podcast that really was like, dropped me into this. I'm like, no, I'm quitting. Like I was already starting in my head because I'd had like a few days or whatever to like rationalize, okay, now I'm on a plane, I'm going home to all of these people that are used to fun drunk Megan. Let's go drink wine. Like all of our socializing is structured around like what restaurant are we going, what bottle are we ordering, da 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 da. And I was like, no, there's never going to be a good time. There's never going to be a time where that's not part of, I'm not going to have to decide to opt out of that. And I kind of thought that there would be this dramatic pushback of all my friends in that moment on that particular trip. Like at least an offside joke of like, oh, are you pregnant? Like, why wouldn't you be drinking? Because I just decided to say, no, thank you, I'm good. Like I didn't do a big show and dance and like say I'm quitting, because also at that point I didn't know how long I was quitting. Like I was trying to quit for a year, like I said. And not one person, including my family, like nobody said anything, which made me realize like, okay, maybe everyone else knew that I needed to deal with this as much like before, right? So, I mean, definitely there's been some situations where closer friends, they're all, as a bunch of couples are going on a wine tour or something like that, and they just don't ask, like they just assume that I wouldn't want to come because I don't drink wine. And yeah, I mean, sometimes that's hard, but by the way, love going on wine tours. There's lots of beautiful things going on at a winery that don't involve actually drinking the wine. Our honeymoon actually went to New Zealand and went to Fabulous because my husband still enjoys wine. So I think you're going to have to shed an identity in some respect, right? But you make new friends. So I have like this massive new community around sobriety. I have, running friends because I switched running for drinking. I have discovered like the world of red sauna raves where like a whole generation wants to do a lot of the partying, but in like a wellness space with the music that I love, and I just honestly think I'm fortunate because there's never been a better time. It's never been more culturally accepted or easier to find like your tribe around that, whether that's like an AA journey that one needs to go on, or it's just like sober curious, or, there's like even menus that you see that it's like low alc, there's like non-alc, low alc. It's like it's this massive new industry. And so it's kind of just almost feels funner.
So, talking about your sobriety journey, you said for a year you tried mindful consumption, right?
Mindful
So
drinking. It's actually a term, and some people might be offended that I think it's total BS. But yeah,
so when we talk about that, did you limit the consumption, or like
yeah. So
how
my
was it?
rules were only on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and I couldn't have. I don't even remember, but I couldn't have more than 2 glasses of wine a night or something. But Lord knows, it could have been 4 back then because I was, had a high tolerance. And yeah, like 90% of the time I was good on my rules, but there was like enough situations in a year. And part of that also, I'll be honest, was because in that time period, I was gonna our wedding was coming up, right? And
Mhm.
as a young girl, I couldn't imagine my wedding without having some champagne, which is so silly because there's like really amazing non-alc champagne now. But and I hardly had to drink the whole night. I was like on my feet. I was dancing. There was like 120 guests that came from all parts of the world. We wanted to make sure we like spent 20 minutes with everybody. It was like this spectacular event, and not at one time did I really want or need alcohol. But, I think for me, it was part of that journey to like mentally it was like I was checking all these boxes of like, how fed up am I with my own stories that don't really ring true anymore?
And so after this mindful consumption phase, was there a phase where it's like, no, I'm not going to consume, or was the occasional drinking still there?
No, so I did the mindful drinking, the wedding passed, and it was literally a month later that I was drinking a lot of white wine in an afternoon with my girlfriend. We were both watching our kids by the pool, and then I drove home. I drove our kids home. And to me, that was like a line that I swore at. I'd been in situations as a young kid trying to like hope that we made it because a parent was driving drunk. And yeah, I just like woke up the next day. That was the 18th of March in 2018, and I was like, no. And it was like a different kind of fed up with oneself. And like I said, I started doing the work mentally. And yeah, really, I think pleasantly, because there wasn't like the social pushback, and I just thought I would miss it more. But in practice, there was very little that I missed. Like, I'm going to be 3,000 days sober in a week in June. And like that's 3,000 days without a hangover. Like, I wake up at 5 a.m. Not that everyone needs to wake up at 5 a.m., but personalized wellness, right? For me, I'm an early bird, and I just have so much energy. Like, what I accomplished before 7 a.m., like some people don't do in a day.
So, in your journey with sobriety, or reducing alcohol to begin with, what did it actually reveal about you? What did you discover about yourself that you had never known?
Well, I kind of mentioned the dancing one, but like adjacent to that is like I always wore crazy bright outfits like that. Like this was my party vibe. But like when I broke it down, it's like, no, I just like being bold. Like, I don't need the film of the filter of alcohol to be like, oh, I'm dressing up to go to the party. I'm like, no, I just like wearing pink, and I like dancing. It doesn't need to be at a bar. I used to several drinks in be dancing on the bar. That was like my thing. And now I dance mostly on Instagram
Were there any
or at
emotional
sauna raves.
were there any emotions that resurfaced unexpectedly during that phase when you were quitting?
Okay, so that's what you mean. So yeah, I mean, the beginning of quitting whatever is your coping mechanism, certainly there's a period where it's not great and easy. I mean, I think I was fortunate in that I'd done so much other work that I'd like literally gained consciousness and awareness around like how sugar affected me and gluten and like sleep. Like I had all these other tools. And so therefore I was equipped to be, I don't know, willing to be present and do the work through that. So um I really started focusing more on certifications around mindset work at that point and understanding the nervous system. And um, I think that just helped me stay present in what needed to be. But I think, some like it was just so, I mean, it's a long story, but when I left Canada and moved, first to Europe, no, first to the US, then to Europe. Anyway, the point is, I left Calgary at 22 with this idea that like I'm so done, like I'm over it. I've done this city, like what's next? And it wasn't until I came back 2 years ago, like at 45, and started revisiting these beautiful places that my dad used to take us, and like all of the things that he instilled in us in terms of loving nature and the mountains, and that I realized that I'd really kept those things connected. So I'd kept like all of the horrible memories and the pain connected in a negative way to all these really beautiful things that he gifted us as kids. And, it took me decades of work, I'd say, to get to a place where, I'm not in victim mentality. I don't blame him for anything. Um, yeah, I can really just reframe a lot of what happened to me as a child in a way that is empowering. Like, what did you learn from the experience? And, I think, like you first asked, like unraveling who am I really without the substance? What's me and what was I masking was like kind of the first important phase.
So, you said that there were relapses, right? So, what was the one thing that that stuck to you whenever you felt like, okay, no, this is the end. I cannot do it further. I cannot go ahead in this sobriety journey anymore. Or did you experience this? Or because I have heard a lot about the relapse phase, the relapses that happen when you're trying to battle out addiction.
Yeah, I didn't have any relapses, and because again, it was like a conscious decision I made. Um I Like I said, I didn't go the AA route, but I mean, even if I had, I would still qualify by their terms. I did never relapse. Yeah, there was like a few times where I was in a situation and I'm like, huh, maybe, like we're on an island in Greece and this gentleman is bringing wine from his vineyard behind us at the restaurant, and like, can everyone taste it? And he's so excited. And I feel like it's going to be really rude to this nice farmer gentleman. um, and so I'll just smell it. And even when I smell the wine, it's just like I immediately go back to no, no. It takes me to on the immediate spiral of like what's going to happen post 5 glasses of that. It's not like a gag reflex, but it is this like conscious, like, wow, yeah, remember that. And no, I so prefer this life.
So, if someone who's listening right now and secretly struggling a sort of addiction, or maybe trapped in addiction, an emotional chaos, or maybe in a destructive, trapped in a self-destructive habit, what would your honest, message, or what would you want to convey?
Yeah, well, I think I'll parse that out a bit because, if someone's dealing with a level of alcoholism that they need like a proper detox, they couldn't just stop on their own. Same with many, hard drugs. You need to get proper clinical help, you should be in a scenario that if something happens physically when you decide to stop doing whatever the substance is, you are supported medically, clinically by that process. So there's like a level of addiction that is so serious that there needs to start with a detoxification that is I was going to say sponsored. That's not the right word, but supported and not alone. But yeah, similar to like in addition to that, and in whatever version of you feeling like you're doing something that's not serving you anymore. I just gave a guided hypnosis to 80 13-year-olds at my son's school today, talking about how the subconscious mind works, and it doesn't understand the negative. So if you keep saying to yourself, stop drinking, all your subconscious is hearing is drinking. So it's so important. And this is, around, habits that don't serve us, but like really any sort of new identity we want to move towards, we need to phrase it in what we do want. So I think that's part of it, is like understanding the work on the subconscious. So probably it involves, okay, where did I get this idea that alcohol is the only way that I can be confident, that I'm only bold and vivacious and fun with alcohol? Let's unravel those stories a bit. Like, when did I start thinking that? And is that true? Is it my story? Okay, what's a new story that I can adopt? Like, no, actually, I feel way better. I remember everything about every night. That's fun. And like just focusing on what you do want. And in the very beginning, again, it was like around motherhood. It's like, I want to remember as much as I can of my kids' childhood, of the conversations that we have. And I mean, community is so key. So like I said, I found pretty quickly, I didn't have access to like a sober community in the small town in Mexico that I lived in at the time, but I had access to really incredible mentors through podcasts. So there was certain individuals that I would just listen to their podcast as I was running. Someone was 10 years ahead of me being sober and just talked about all the benefits. And I just started this reprogramming of like, why would I want to stay sober? Like all the benefits, all the things that are on the next side of the next level of, or years or days or whatever. And then, like we kind of touched on, you might lose some friends. So it's really great idea to like go find some new ones that are on the same page. And so I started running. I signed up with a running coach. So I immediately had like 30 running buddies and a reason to wake up feeling great at 6 a.m. to meet everyone to run. And so it's like setting yourself up to succeed.
Got it. And I think I think that is the key, right? And that is the key. So it's you have to pull up. You have to first realize, and you have to pull up yourself to understand that it has to stop. And I think the way forward would definitely is difficult, but it's not impossible.
Yeah. And I work with a lot of women that don't drink, and it's not like they didn't get anywhere near, or they never really had any problem with it. It wasn't interfering in their, in my case, it was interfering with relationships. It held me back from doing bigger goals. I never lost a job or anything because of it, but, it doesn't need to be so dysfunctional for you to reconsider your relationship with it. And that could be caffeine, shopping, scrolling. Maybe alcohol isn't your vice, sugar. There's just a lot of power in being like, hey, is this actually a functional relationship I have with the substance or this thing or this relationship? Or like, what is it potentially holding me back from?
Absolutely. So a bit about your work. Your work centers heavily around, as you mentioned, nervous system regulation. Can you tell us a bit about it? Like, for me and for a lot of listeners, this term might be something they might be hearing for the first time. So
Yeah, for sure.
can you
So,
tell?
I mean, I talk a lot about polyvagal states, and so understanding when we're in the fight or flight response, meaning we're under stress. And first, maybe understanding that we have a nervous system. The nervous system reacts to stressors. And basically, the short version is there's fight or flight, meaning you're scared, under threat. And then there's rest and digest, right? And we don't want to be in rest and digest our whole life. That is not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is have a more conscious relationship and awareness with how we behave when we're under stress so that we feel more in control of the situations, even though we're still stressed, right? And understanding a certain level of stress is required for growth, to expand your ability, to deal with other types of stress or more, if we're talking about building a business, like you make your first million and that seems like great. And then you're like, wait, there's a lot of stress that comes along with like managing the books at that level. And then you want to go to 10 and like, you're always expanding your ability to hold more. And so the four polyvagal states that, most people have heard probably of the fight and flight, right? So the fight is you are aggressive, you want to like address the part. Flight is you're like, see you later, I'm out of here, I'm not dealing with this stressor. The other ones are fawn, which is more, it's socialized into women, right? Oftentimes the fawn is like people pleasing in order to feel like it's going to be a safer situation. So with an alcoholic parent, that looks like being hyper vigilant and understanding like every minute stage of your parents' alcoholism so that when it's time to like get lost, when it's time to like ask for what you want, when it's time to take care of them, or to like not do anything to anger them because it's that at that peak, right? So there's I could give lots of other examples, but that was what came to mind based on what we've been talking about. And yeah, the flight can also look like just being silent, right? Like maybe not physically leaving the situation, but you're not voicing what you actually want to share or, standing up for yourself. And the freeze, I think, is also, I don't know, it's not like you're only one default, right? Like we tend to, certain situations call us into certain habits. Like maybe you have one sort of strategy on a nervous system level in a work setting and another one in your relationship, another one with your parents. But, most of us default to kind of two or three as, we lean on people pleasing versus we love to spike the anger and like get off the adrenaline high of the cortisol and like dealing with it face to face, head on. So I think just understanding those states and what your default is and what you can do in that moment. For example, if your default is fight, anger is an incredibly powerful energy. What can we channel it towards, instead of maybe what you're angry at? Like maybe we can channel it into the passion of building the solution in your business, for example.
Thank you so much for sharing, because this term might be very unheard of by a few listeners who are battling or who do not know these terms. I think this was quite an awakening for them. Talking about the wellness industry once again, what's that something the wellness industry gets completely wrong right now?
It's a big soapbox. Yeah, I mean, I think anytime that you're encountering a quote unquote expert that claims that they have like a one size fits all solution, run. I mean, and whether that's like this one supplement will solve everybody's, it's like, okay, they're trying to sell you a product. So that's like, Yeah, the one size fits all solution. I think you have to appreciate and be super conscious about, big pharma saw the wellness industry exploding and therefore capitalized on the supplement market. And so there is a vast, expensive market that you can get quite tied up in and be spending like $2,000 a year easily. Some are spending that a month on these, elite supplements and biohacking things. And at the end of the day, if you just ate a little bit more fruit and vegetables, like you'd probably have better results and it wouldn't be costing you this. And understanding like uh, you're having your body break down a compressed supplement that's artificial is much more taxing to your system than eating nature. Um, but yeah, I think there's just a lot of really loud voices that have the opinion that like their thing that they're doing is supposed to work for everyone. And if it doesn't work for you, there's something wrong with you. And I think that's just super problematic.
So you also speak about less is more approach to wellness. Why simplicity is so powerful to you?
Yeah, well, I think ultimately it comes down to integration and sustainability. Again, if it like feels like brushing your teeth, like you don't think about brushing your teeth anymore, hopefully. um, and also like how important joy and pleasure and are to the human psyche, right? So if you hate running, like probably that's not your thing. Like maybe if for some reason you just have to, you know, say that you did a half marathon, okay, train up for it and then like say you did it and find something else that you actually enjoy, like dancing or Pilates, or, maybe you don't appreciate how much you miss team sports from when you were a kid. And there's like an adult league of pretty much everything these days. So I think it's so important to understand on a personal level what are your non-negotiables and then give yourself permission to not have FOMO or feel guilty about not doing, you know, the current latest 20 wellness trends. If you want to try it, try it. If you love it, great. If you don't, I really believe it wasn't meant for you. And also important to understand that these things ebb and flow. So maybe the routine that was perfect for you in your 20s does not work for you in your 30s and 40s or, postpartum. You have young children at home. Maybe the thing you did before you were pregnant to stay healthy is not practical anymore. So it's really understanding how you can thread these things in a way that it doesn't feel like extra work.
Absolutely. So, talking about your book, I wanted to bring this up here because you did mention, and I did see a lot of coverage on that as well. Do you have a copy to show?
I do, although this particular copy has the author's thing across.
Wow, I can see that. So, can you tell us something about this? It's already on Amazon and already in stores.
Yeah, yes, I published it January 2025, so it's been around. And it's available on Amazon pretty much globally. Yeah, it was kind of a labor of love. I always wanted to write a memoir. This is my second book. I wrote a book that's a 10-day detox for moms in 2019. I actually first wrote it in Spanish and then I translated it into English, and back when you had to translate your own things. um, and then the memoir was kind of like another thing on my bucket list. So it is essentially my Latin style version of Eat, Pray, Love story of the 15 years that I spent living in Mexico, and threads a lot of the ups and downs and things that I went through in being an expat, in, the alcoholism stories in there. So the marinating in chaos is the chaos of high functioning alcoholism, chaos of living in a country that's not yours and that you maybe don't understand all the dynamics, chaos of motherhood, and chaos of parts of my relationship at the time. And so it's a little bit about how I, work through those things, but it ultimately is a guide for any woman primarily that really wants to get healthy for good, because I shape it into, and this is how I got to the philosophy that I have around wellness. So it's a lot of journal prompts, a lot of juicy storytelling, and a lot of really giving women permission to just follow their intuition and tune out all the noise.
Whoa. And do you have any more coming up?
I hope so, but honestly, my dream is to have my next book be a 6-figure book deal and actually get it published with a traditional publisher. So I'm still finding the way to do that. We'll see.
We get to see it again, right? So in the stores.
I hope so. I think I have at least another 2, if not 3 books in me, honestly.
Wow. And you work with ambitious women, founders, and entrepreneurs. So, what pattern have you, noticed among high achieving women?
Oh, I mean, so many. Yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on it already in that they tend to have this laundry list of things they're doing towards their health and wellness. And they tell me their wellness routine, and I'm like, wow, that sounds exhausting. Like, how's that all working for you? And, we just peel back the layers of, so what if you go to Pilates 3 days a week and not 6? Like, so they have this routine, and then they have layers of guilt that they're not, excelling. They're not being successful at wellness. And so then that creates all this inner turmoil. And so it's a lot about giving them permission to just write their own wellness. Like, what does that actually look like? Probably it's like half of what you're doing. And and yeah, most women are immediately like drop their shoulders and feel like a sense of relief when I tell them, like, no, put down your wellness sword. Like, and let's just go back to basics. And again, like, thread pleasure and joy into life, because I feel like especially high powered women, they're capable of doing hard things and putting up with a lot of, putting up with a lot in general. And in that category of restriction, they feel like we've raised many generations of women that feel like they've really accomplished something when they've like restricted themselves successfully for an entire week or something, instead of like tuning into how certain foods make them feel energetically, or how amazing it is to sleep in an extra hour when you had a hard day the day before or you're sick, instead of like forcing yourself to like keep up with this routine that you've created that, maybe sometimes it feels great, but you need to build in breaks and ebb and flow and flexibility, or, ebb and flow around your cycle, or ebb and flow around, oh, now I have a newborn. Like, let's stop feeling guilty that you're not doing this whole script that you had previously.
Got it. So they basically suffer burnout when they are trying to prioritize everything around them and not themselves, right?
Yeah, I mean, which it's so hard to get out of. One of my mentors, Lisa Carmen Wang, always talks about the good girl brainwashing. Like, we've from a very young age been brainwashed to consider everybody else's feelings in the room, smile and bear it if it's not what our choice would be. And yeah, I think things are changing, like, as more and more women have literally more power in terms of leadership, capital, options. and these conversations are changing where women feel more able to say, wait, is that my story? Or what do I actually want out of life? And again, it goes back to getting really comfortable with saying no. I was actually just sitting with a mom today at the co-volunteering with me, and she's like, "Oh, I wish I just like there's just so many things I just don't know how to say no." And she's corporate engineer, and I'm like, "Well, what would you take off your plate?" And she's like, "Well, that's the thing. Like I love all the things, but sometimes it's hard to get honest with ourselves when it says like, it's so hard for a mom, for example, to make a decision to do something for her when her child has something planned that they love. Um, and, probably 80% of the time you can prioritize what's best for the child, but you have to take those breaks. I just went to Paris by myself for a week. I was supposed to speak at an event. The event got canceled, already had the ticket. It's like, you know what? Spending a week in Paris by myself with zero plans, it sounds like so amazing to my nervous system right now. And it was.
Beautiful. So, Megan, you have a podcast of your own as well, right?
So I've done a podcast for 7 seasons. It's called Wellness is a Way of Life.
Okay. Okay.
I'm going to launch a new podcast probably in September. I'm going to put that
Mm-hmm.
one to bed. It's been a great run and I love doing it, but I'm going to shift into one that's called Wellness Infrastructure,
Oh,
which is
wow.
also the name of my Substack. So if you want to find me on Substack, Wellness Infrastructure, and then you'll know
Mm-hmm.
if and when the podcast
Awesome.
comes to
So,
life.
uh, tell us something about the medical wellness tourism. I think
Mhm.
that's quite new, right? That's a new addition to your list of work.
My husband is my co-founder. He's the medical side. He's a vascular and general surgeon, has been in medicine for 30 years. And he's that part of, we do advanced medical diagnostics. We take small groups from primarily Canada and the US to Chiapas, Mexico, which is also where we lived for 15 years. So we are very well steeped in that part of the world. And we have, decade-long connections and partnerships with the people that we work with, the private hospital that we take everyone to. And so essentially we get everyone like an executive physical, hospital grade data on like the current state of health. And then I build out a wellness plan and we support 12 months out from the retreat. And then the rest of the retreat is like any retreat. We do a lot of wellness sessions. We do culture immersion, like cacao tastings. And we do a Temazcal, which is a Mayan sweat lodge ritual. We hike up waterfalls. We swim in tropical rivers. Yeah, it's like a whole vibe. And we have taken 4 groups at this point, and there's 4 more on the calendar for this year. Starting in 2027, we're really gonna be focusing on growing the business more with, bringing private corporate groups down. And, yeah, as it stands, we take, cohorts of men only, women only. We do co-ed that are couples, and then we do also couples.
Beautiful. So where do we find the information regarding that? Do you have a website for the same?
Yes, it's altavitahealth.ca, but if you find me on social media, you will definitely find I'm talking about it quite a bit. But the separate website is Altavita, like High Life, altavitahealth.ca.
Okay,
And
beautiful.
yeah, it's been incredible, the feedback. We were pretty confident that there would be a market for this type of experience. In part for, older generations that are interested in having a more personalized, warm experience with their healthcare, and also understanding that both the Canadian and the US system are very steeped in what's called or referred to as medicine 2.0, meaning it is essentially sick care. You're not really going to get the attention you need until you're showing up with certain symptoms that fit you into like, oh, now we need to pay attention. Now you need that diagnostic test. We're giving you diagnostic testing to give you data so that you can better understand what might come down the line so that you take on, hopefully better habits now. So you feel better now, but it's also to understand, like, if you made these tiny shifts now, your entire trajectory and health span and longevity is going to be transformed. And so, yeah, we kind of range guests between 35 and we've had up to 75-year-olds. But generally speaking, it's kind of like that 35 to 55 window where I think everyone's more aware these days they need to take a little bit more agency in being proactive with their health, and that there's a lot that they can do beyond like trusting the doctor in the lab coat who's, essentially trying to rush them out of the appointment.
Absolutely. So, talking about real stories or transformation, do you have a success story that has stuck to you and that has stayed with you?
It's hard to pick one, but yeah, I mean, I will say I've worked with several women that when they came to me, they were either actively processing or totally denying going through a miscarriage and were really passionate about becoming moms, but they were dealing with a lot, building a business or whatever. And so really through this process of giving them permission and like peeling back the layers, it's like, what can we take off your plate? What, wellness even are you doing that's actually not serving you? And also I think, because I can speak to it so deeply, I understand the medical side. I understand that version of, IVF, of birthing, of the whole system, and really how, North American culture, miscarriages are not dealt with at all. It's like, oh, there's like maybe they give you a pamphlet to go get some emotional support, but it's not really given to you in the medical setting. And yeah, I think that's just been like one of the most rewarding because, helping them process something so traumatic and then working with them. In one case, it was 3 months and she was pregnant again, and now she has her daughter. And other cases, it was like working for a whole year and then eventually got pregnant, had their child. And yeah, I think there's just so much that can be done when a woman feels emotionally supported and also given, like a spiritual lens and some ritual around processing something really hard and moving forward, and also like calling in, what she does want.
So these have completely, stayed with you, right? The way they have
Yeah,
overcome it.
I mean the stories, and also I still work with those clients. Like I tend to work with clients for 2 to 5 years.
So I would like to ask you a few rapid fire questions
Okay.
because I know you have a lot to add to, all based on what I, read up on you. So yes.
I'm
So
an open book.
here.
Hit me.
So one wellness practice that you can't live without.
Ugh. Well, for me, it's so hard to pick one, but yeah, I think I'll just catch all movement. So it's kind of cheating because to me that includes dance, yoga, going for walks, just like maintaining some activity in my body and acknowledging like sometimes when we're feeling really down, like the last thing you like intuitively want to do is like get up and get moving. But just understanding like how powerful it is that our, you know, emotions, energy and motion, it's just like you need to move it through your body. And once you have that understanding, it's really hard to like literally sit in hard stuff. It's like, no, I need to go for a run. I need to go to yoga. I need to go dance in a sauna rave and in like, you know, like the kids do, they shake their sillies out.
Body breaks.
Mhm. Oh my God, I'd forgotten about body breaks. And Luann Johnson, I can like hear the whole, anyway.
One thing you had to unlearn to heal.
Hmm. I mean, I guess this misconception, or I believe that certain experts or certain to have all the answers, like I think is what it boils down to. That you have to have all the answers, or that somebody that you admire has all the answers, and yeah, I think when you deeply understand that like nobody has all the answers, it really it gives you a lot of to me it feels very liberating in the body and the mind. Yeah, to just show up more authentically. And I don't think you can fully heal until you feel like you can be yourself.
And I think I know this answer, but I would still ask you: are you a morning person or a night owl?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I with alcohol, I was a night owl. Sober, I'm a morning person.
And one word that describes your current season of life.
Building or expansion.
And what does alignment mean to you?
It means having a certain level of self-awareness of what your true values, desires, goals are, and then, being quite cutthroat in aligning your time, your energy, your attention to achieving those things or being in line with the things that you claim you want, desire, need.
Um, the next would be a book that changed your life.
Oh my goodness, so many, but I will say because I feel like it's really accessible and powerful across the board for any human is Breathe by James Nestor. I read that maybe 4 years ago now, and it's a little I mean, there's a lot of science, which I love, but there's also actual breath work teachings in there. And just for me, like one of the number one longevity metrics is the size of your lungs. And I couldn't believe that I'd been a yoga teacher for 10 years and I didn't know that you can increase your lung capacity if you actually intentionally work on breathing. And and I just think it's a really powerful, accessible tool that even, people that think meditation is too woo or, like any sort of these mindful practices, like everyone can get on board with breath work and even just taking like like one of those in a stressful situation, you're going to make a better decision.
Absolutely. And yoga, I think yoga emphasizes a lot on breath work, how you inhale and exhale. So, yes.
It had, I mean, and I built a lot of awareness around breath work and I certainly used it. I mean, my favorite mom, like when I'm really at my edge of patience, it's like inhaling and then the shh, which is like to me like a shh, as well as, gathering my thoughts and how I want to respond to something. But yeah, I just hadn't, there's a lot of science in that book that I was never taught specifically in yoga that I think is really powerful. Also around like why it's
And
important to breathe through your nose and not your mouth and all
yes,
of the
I
sort
was
of
just coming
other
to that.
like
Yes.
uh, there's a lot of things like ADHD that are related to people who kids and people that tend to breathe through their mouth. There's just like a lot of cool science in there that I loved.
Mm. And one misconception that people have about sobriety.
That it's boring.
A habit people should stop glorifying.
It's a hard one. I mean, something like the 5 a.m. club being for everybody, it really isn't. There's different sleep phenotypes, if you will. Um, but also kind of just like that a specific morning routine is going to like solve all your problems. Some people benefit way more from like an afternoon something something, a walk. It's really just finding like what actually makes sense. So maybe I'll round it out by saying, I know this is supposed to be fast, that there's like one thing that's going to solve your stress. Not true.
So, are you a coffee person or a tea person?
Both, but mornings I'm coffee. Yeah, I'd say after living in Chiapas, which is like one of the hinterlands of coffee production in the world, I'm definitely more of a coffee person, but I do still like my, Irish roots. I love a good Earl Grey tea with bergamot. Also love chai, so it's hard to say.
Chai, that's my morning thing. One thing you do when you are emotionally overwhelmed.
Well, breathe. Um, music for me is like a real grounding, kind of reset to whatever's going on.
And biggest lesson motherhood taught you?
Mm, that's a hard one. Well, it might sound counterintuitive, but you know, choosing yourself. So making decisions that are going to improve you as a human, might seem selfish, but they're actually going to make you a better parent.
And the last one would be one message you wish every woman heard growing up.
Well, I just made a viral reel about this, and it was very specific information on our menstrual blood, but there's now science that tells us that menstrual blood plasma actually heals wounds, like, I don't know, at least twice as fast as normal blood plasma does. But I think in general, that whole, that our bodies are magic, even down to our menstrual blood is magic, and having like zero shame, and in fact being really empowered by, I would even go as far as say we are the more powerful gender as it is.
And and this brings us to the last question of the podcast. And I would like to ask, if listeners remember just one thing from today's conversation, what do you hope them to, leave with or stay with?
You are the experts of your own mind and body, so follow your intuition.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, Megan, for taking time and joining us on this podcast. And everything was very intuitive. And I think a lot of us learned a lot of new terms. And you also, made us believe that if we choose to, we can, overcome any sort of addiction in our life.
Well,
Thank you
you so
so
much
much.
for having me.
To stay connected, visit our website and follow Healthy Aligned Living on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for more conversations, insights, and updates. If you would like to reach out, you can contact us by phone at 1-866-213-0518 or email us at info@healthyalignedliving.com. And if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might benefit from it as well.